That's good. با درود آقای بابایی.
درود.
So, thank you for accepting my invitation. I will start by a short introduction, and then we are going to have a discussion about Iran economy. Good afternoon and welcome to Iran Unveiled, new sessions where we are going to focus on the economic. My name is Marjan Abadi, co-founder of the Cyrus Collective, an initiative dedicated to encouraging serious discussions about Iran's future, its institutions, its society, and the reconstructions and prosperous country after decades under the Islamic Republic. Before we begin, I would like to apologize in English I use every day, so please forgive me if sometimes I search for the right words. Today, I'm honored to welcome Dr. Hamid Babaei, economist whose focus on financial systems, economic governance, and structural challenges. Focusing Iran's economy may sometimes appear technical, but geopolitics. I think for the ones who are following the Hormuz episode, you know that Lloyds have been able to achieve what the IRGC haven't been, closing the transfer of oil and raising the price. Economic power is often the invisible foundation of geopolitical power. And when we speak about Iran, we are not speaking only about the country. The future of Iran's economy will have a major consequences for entire Middle East, for regional stability, energy markets of people. Understanding the real state of Iran's economy is therefore essential to think seriously about the reconstruction of the country in the future, and it's exactly what we will discuss with Dr. Hamid Babaei. Welcome, Hamid. Thank you for accepting
Many
this
thanks
invitation.
for having me. You're welcome.
Is
Hello,
there something
everybody.
I
Many
forgot
thanks for
to
having
say?
me. No, I don't think so. That was okay.
Okay.
But your voice and your picture was interrupted for a few seconds. There was a disruption, and I don't know. It was in your technical problem in your connection, maybe, but it is okay now.
I didn't saw that. I didn't remark. Okay. Okay. Sorry. So, for the preparation of this session, I was thinking to start by simple questions about the situation of the economic in Iran. A diagnosis, what has happened to the Iranian economy since this last 47 years? From where we are where now?
Yeah, actually, we have to take a look at the economic indicators. The major indicators are GDP or economic growth, inflation rate, exchange rate, interest rates. These are the first indicators that if you want to examine if an economy is in healthy conditions or not, you have to take a look at them. We had a double-digit economic growth before the revolution. After the revolution, the economic growth started to diminish, and from double-digit rates, it fell below 10%. And over this 40 years, 47 years, the Iran's economy suffers from low economic growth, and mostly this growth in many years relies on oil exports, and it is mostly associated or correlated with crude oil prices. Whenever in periods crude oil price increases, we have the economy realizes economic growth, and in periods of lower crude oil price or other commodity price that Iran is the main exporter, then economic growth slows down. Concerning inflation, we have had chronic inflation, uh, more than 20% in some periods. Inflation exceeded 50%, 60%, and there was only a short period of time that inflation rate fell below 20%. So for almost half a century, Iran's economy has experienced an inflation minimum level of 50%, 20%, and in average 30 or 35%. And this is uh, an effect or an outcome, consequence of unhealthy banking system and weak, poor supervision of the Iran central bank. The exchange rate has reacted to this chronic inflation. When inflation accumulates, finally, in order to have the same purchasing power for the economy, whether or not to purchase goods from the country or import those goods from abroad, then there should be the same purchasing power. Otherwise, if the exchange rate doesn't react, then it will adversely impact domestic production and increases imports. So exchange rates has appreciated. Iran's currency has lost maybe 90%. I don't remember that exact number, 95% of the value. And recent decade, for more than one decade, we have it. It has speeded up. We see uh, much more severe actually depreciation of the domestic currency, and it can impact, actually can exacerbate or the inflation. These are the main actually the main issues related to Iran's economy, and this is actually, I would like to say, this is an outcome or consequence of bad governance of the Islamic regime, and this is a government that doesn't care about the economy and economy or economic resources. Uh, the government uses them for their own ideologic purposes. So uh, I would like to I always prioritize politics compared to economics. Economic is an effect of politics. Sometimes people may think, okay, this is political conflicts, political issues are impacted by economic problem. No, I won't say that. These are economic issues and problems that are outcomes of political issues. So, in
So,
summary, yeah.
um, because if I well understand you, this is the reason for that this such a rich country has such a poor outcome for its people is the politics.
I would say yes, in terms of governance, the constitution, for example, uh, usually governments try to prepare ground for foreign direct investments, but foreign ownership, foreign ownership is not recognized by the Islamic state. This is one reason, not the only reason. So how is it possible to expect, for example, foreigners to come to Iran to invest in the country? They do not have the right to own 100%, 100% of the share of the company. So they are obliged to establish a joint venture, and joint venture has its own challenges. This is one issue. The other one is that they don't have hedging instruments to hedge against exchange rate fluctuations. In every modern economy or emerging economies, there are hedging instruments in the financial markets so that the foreign companies can hedge their exposure to currency fluctuations so that at the end they can return back their capital. This is another issue. The other one is the budget deficit. The budget deficit has been high, and there is no year having budget surplus or budget balance. So budget balance has never happened in Iran after since the revolution. This is another issue. Religious bureaucracy is the other one. There are many issues that are related to government's politics. Yes, of course.
So, if you want to describe the reasons of because many people say the crisis is a purchasing power crisis in Iran, even though I don't believe that, because the crisis is more that we don't want this governance, this nonsense governance, and how damaged are the energy infrastructures, water management, transportation networks, industrial capacity have been during the Islamic Republic. We know that before the Islamic Republic, we have been constructing roads, constructing industry, constructing water management. How have been they managed these days for
Yeah.
47 years?
You talked about purchasing power. Actually, purchasing power depends on supply side and demand side as a whole. Supply
Mhm.
side has realized lower growth, and demand side depends on the population growth and let's say liquidity or money in circulation. And the banking system is constantly generating liquidity, injecting it into the economy. Central bank is printing money, and higher money value circulating in the economy with low economic growth. The outcome is inflation and lowering purchasing power. So why your question is mostly related to economic growth. Why there is no economic growth? Because of these conditions are not prepared for investment. People are not optimistic about investment. There were decades where people became more optimistic, investors, I mean, and but those periods of time were short, and the investment didn't continue. You know, in economic theory, economic growth can be uh, can happen by either investment or productivity. In Iran, productivity doesn't exist. There is no because the free market has been disrupted by the government, and since there is no free market, floating prices, the productivity will never happen. In terms of energy prices, yeah, the government has supplied cheap energy with cheaper prices to the industries. For example, in European Union, I think TTF gas a couple of days ago rose to 60 cents, and now it is around 30 cents, and in Iran it is less than 10 cents to the industry, petrochemical plants, not as a fuel. Fuel is even cheaper, less than 5 cents per cubic meter. So you see the difference between prices and how cheap is energy in Iran. And since this voluminous supply of energy by the government, you see, industry is not productive. So Iran's cheap energy supplies have been unsuccessful in realizing economic growth. And on the other hand, this subsidy, or this is called hidden subsidy in economic theory, because government can raise prices to have higher income, but uh, mm, sells this gas or other energies with a very low price to the people. So, on the other hand, this has led to high level of energy consumption in the country to the point that the gas, for example, the gas consumption in Iran was almost half the whole European Union before Russia-Ukraine crisis in the housing sector. You see uh, how extensive is energy consumption in Iran, and government is not able to raise prices because of public discontent, fear. Government fears, okay, raising prices will trigger protests across country, and yeah, this has led to higher the actually deficit or shortage of gas supplies. The consumption is has exceeded the supply, so that industries in the winter, the gas supply is cut and they stop production. There are many firms who complain every year. There are many firms producing steels. Iran's industrial sector uh, uh, mainly produces steel, different metals and minerals. And there are also another sector of petrochemical sector. Their gas or energy supply is cut during the winter for 1 month, 2 months, and in the summer the power is cut, electrical power, because they don't have the capacity to meet this increasing demand of energy. And over this year, the economy energy sector suffers from lower investment. Government has not been able to invest or attract foreign investors to increase production. The production, for example, production of crude oil uh, uh, has not increased since 15 years, 20 years, even longer. And the best thing this government has been able to do is to keep this level of energy production. So this production relies on foreign investment, and because of the weak governance and lack of uh, related laws, legal infrastructure to attract foreigners, the energy sector suffers from investment as well. So, but the question I would like to refer to the budget deficit here. Your question concerns why the government has not been able to develop the infrastructure, energy infrastructure, roads, transportation infrastructure, and so on. Because of the budget structure, all of these questions are related to the budget structure, the monetary system, the poor central bank supervision, the fiscal system, the banking system that generates liquidity. These are all related to budget deficit, and the budget deficit actually is another issue we can talk about in more detail about the budget deficit. The deficit is almost 40%, and part of this, the non-oil budget, I mean, and part of this deficit is compensated by crude oil revenues. And again, there is also deficit, and the major reason for this deficit is religious bureaucracy. A broad range of institutions exist in Iran, and all of these institutions are not productive. They do not contribute to the economy, and they are one of the reasons Iran's economy has excess demand. The demand side exceeds the supply side. And so far, this government is over there. This range of institutions are over there, and they need this budget. So, so long as the budget deficit issue is not resolved, the economy is not able to invest in other infrastructures. And we see the transportation infrastructure has many problems. Railroad system has not developed since 50 years, and yeah.
So what I,
and
if
other
I,
also. Yeah.
in my understanding, what's happened is that even though they made the cheap price for the commodities, because they are not able to assume a certain level of services, regular services, it makes it impossible to planify production. And also because they are not able to give a constant market, a stable market, they are not able to, um, with other problems, of course, related to their management. Essentially, they are not able to be as active for any kind of industry to
Yeah, cheap energy is one actually. In my opinion, the government provides cheap energy not as a means for to provoke economic growth. This is to keep people silent.
Mhm.
Otherwise, discounted people it provokes manifest. So for industries, yeah, they receive cheap energy, but that's not the only issue. They have to be able to have to find foreign partners. For example, there are car manufacturers in Iran. They have difficulty in importing technology to learn from foreigners. In modern economies, companies have the possibility to establish joint ventures to learn from each other. For example, Samsung is present in Silicon Valley. Their objective is to learn from them. Or, for example, Volkswagen has a joint venture with a US firm, Quantiscape, to learn from them how to make electrical batteries. Iranian manufacturers have no such a possibility. So they cannot learn from foreigners. They cannot establish joint ventures to for so that they produce more modern, they renew their productions, and they have many difficulties for accessing finance. The interest rate is high in Iran. Banking is interest rate is 20%, and bond markets this 37%. Since 2 years, interest rate in Iran's bond market is more than 30 years. How is it possible to finance production?
Yeah, I
Firms
understand.
have possibility to
Why
sell
doing
corporate bonds.
something?
Yeah,
Mhm. Why doing something which is which needs your work if you have a great percent of rate on the market? Yeah, sure. Like
yeah,
30%, it's a lot.
yeah. And this
Let's say.
30% is due to again to the government deficit because
Mm.
they're selling too much bonds as a way to compensate part of the deficit. This is an excessive amount of bonds they're selling every day, lowers prices, raising the interest rate. That's the issue. Yeah.
If nothing changes politically and in terms of governance, what will Iran's economy looks like in 10 years?
I think it is better to look at the last 20 years to see the trend, and
Hmm.
we can see whether or not this trend continues or not. So I would like to refer again to the budget deficit.
Hmm.
Since 2 years, they knew uh, they have to find a way to manage this budget deficit. One option was privatization.
Hmm.
Privatization for the government was a way to sell the state owned companies to increase the revenue and lower the deficit. The privatization can have many benefits for the economy as a whole, but those privatizations actually were not the true privatizations. They just sold the firms to members
To
of
France.
Revolutionary Guard, or the firms that belong to Revolutionary Guard or other government-owned, not state-owned institutions. In Iran, we have state-owned and government-owned. There are large cartels and holdings that do not belong to the state, but are directly supervised by the supreme leader and pay no taxes. Most of these firms, petrochemical firms, manufacturing firms, were delivered to these economic cartels, and this was an effort to decrease the economic the deficit for 5 or 10 years. They could continue selling these state-owned firms. Afterwards, when they sold most of these firms and privatization was almost done, they started the second effort. Iran had no bond market until 2013. The first bond that was sold in Iran was in 2000, no, not 13, 15, sorry. The first government bond or treasury bill was sold in 2015 in Iran, and since then, corporate bonds have been authorized. Okay, this was the new source of income for the government to sell bonds to reduce deficit and pay interest on it. So they started selling voluminous amounts of bonds. This led to raising the interest rates, and
Mhm.
after they could continue for several years, they're still selling bonds today. You see, they couldn't lower the interest rate. The first years it was issued, the rate was 17-18%, and since then we have uh, seen a continuous increase in this interest rate. That implies the government is not able to reduce bond sale. So that was the second project they started in 2015, just 10 years after privatization. A couple of years ago, they started the third project. The third project was making the converting the properties, the state-owned properties, productive. They had, for example, lands, buildings they didn't use. They wanted to sell it, and it was not successful. They could sell nothing, and since then the deficit remains the same, and it is increasing because they have two huge pension funds. There are millions of pensioners in Iran. Almost 10 million people that formerly worked for Iran's armed forces, or they were working in the public sector. Iran's public sector includes 4 million employees. There are 4 million employees working for the state, and they are not productive at all, and they should be paid. So most of them have been retired. There are now 10 million pensioners existing in Iran, and the government should pay. And those two pension funds are bankrupt. They are not able to actually the number of uh, employed people who pay contributions to these funds is not sufficient to cover all the payments for these pensioners. So this is the state should pay these pension funds, and this amount of money has increased, and so the budget deficit is not resolved, and this increases over time, and religious bureaucracy as well, and their military budget as well. So since then, the trend shows that the government's deficit is increasing over time, and their alternatives to find a way to reduce this deficit has ended up with failure, and we can expect the same trend in the future. In the future, what happens? We have a higher number of pensioners, pension recipients. We have lower economic growth because global oil price is lower and the government is not able to invest. Nobody is optimistic about investment in the country. Even Iranian investments, they all find the way to take the capital out of the country. So capital flight is high in Iran. It is almost last year it was, I think, more than $20 billion. This number is a big money for Iran's economy, where the government budget is 20-25 billion dollars. So if we have $20 billion of deficit in capital account, we can understand how uh, uh, adverse is the situation. So in the next 10 years, we have to expect the same trend, rising budget deficit, rising interest rates, making investors more pessimistic about capital return, higher capital outflow, and inflation as well, because the central bank continues to print money, and the inflation, if we take average inflation last 3 years, compare it to the prior 3 years, we can see it is higher. So the average inflation is steadily increasing over time. So in the next 10 years, we can have inflation close to 120%. Now it is stands at 60%. Uh, we can expect higher inflation, lower economic growth, 2% maybe, and people are losing their purchasing power, depreciating exchange rates, and higher interest rate as well. So that's what uh, will I think will happen to Iran's economy. We see no change in governance politics. We see no change in their policies regarding the religious bureaucracy, to lower the budget, to lower the military budget, to stop supporting proxy groups in the region, sending them money. And we see in the governance level, we cannot see any change or any will to change their approach in managing the economy. Yeah.
I understand. So
Yeah.
maybe, dear Hamid, we can go to something more happier. Let's imagine we ended um, this nightmare, even though I think the action of lights creates a great help for the Islamic Republic and are their supports, because they want to say, don't go to Iran, that will be a nightmare for the whole world. And they create the situation. Lloyd has created this situation for make pressure and help the IRGC to survive. I'm not very surprised of that, because we can see that the only country who still have the IRGC not on the terrorist list is the British, is the Great Britain. So let's say we arrive to end up this government, and we are going back home, reconstructing our country. What would be the best actions for the first 12 months to stabilize urgently and to reconstruct what have been destroyed?
Actually, I think there are issues that cannot be resolved in the short run. We have to classify the issues, problems into the short run ones, and those that can be have to be settled in the long run. For example, deficit is an issue that cannot be resolved in the short run, or inflation as well. Inflation maybe sometimes uh, mm, this kind of transition leads to um, optimism in the country. This kind of optimism or change in the shift in the expectation can have a short-run impact. Maybe inflation can reduce in the short run, but the other economic issues, economic growth, employment, unemployment, these are long-run issues. In the short run, I think it is very important to focus on foreign relations and to restructure the relation. For example, in the short run, we cannot expect the transition government to fire all the members of Revolutionary Guard. There are hundreds of thousands of people working there. They have no other way. no way to continue their subsistence. So, or for the army, for the government, there are millions of people for working for them. If the transition government cuts their budget, okay, they will form groups, terrorist groups, to make instability in the government. So the transition government so have to find a way to manage them. The best alternative is to keep them in the short run for the to first 12 months, uh, paying their salary to take the control of the situation. Stability of the country in this first year is the most important thing. The transition government should stabilize the social order, the stabilize the country, and at the same time starting negotiation with foreign countries, sending friendship message to them, and establishing good relationships with them, because it is very very essential for the economy to control the exchange
Collaborate.
rate, to lift the sanction. Economy suffers from sanctions, and governments firms cannot export their products to other countries, and they have many difficulties. So it is essential to start from the first year, and this program of negotiating with other countries can also make Iranians or other people optimistic about Iran's future political system, and this can encourage people to come to Iran, to visit Iran, and to increase the number of tourists, Iran's tourism, which can have positive economic outcomes. For example, there is Turkey in Iran's neighborhood, attracting tens of millions of people as tourism, and part of their foreign reserve comes from this tourism. Uh, Tourism can be encouraged in Iran for the first year, and this can r- be a relief for the currency crisis of the country. So I think it is very, very important for the transition government to start from the first year to the strategy of lifting sanctions. The sanctions cannot be lifted immediately. There are many Iranian assets has been freezed elsewhere. The Iranians have billions of dollars in other countries, in South Korea, in Japan, in European countries that have been freezed by the government. And this money belongs to Iran's people. This money belongs to next government. And the next government should start negotiating to get access to these funds, to get access to the revenue of oil, to so that in the for the following years they can use them for the development of the country. And uh, liberation of prices, privatization. These are the next step, uh, things that can be done by the government. For example, they have many things in chain, many issues in the legal system that should be resolved. For example, private ownership of foreigners. The whole constitution should be laid aside, and the new constitution should be established. And in this new constitution, uh, there should be much attention to the ownership and market economies, and this is the constitution that should guarantee the ownership of property by the foreigners. Otherwise, for the next years, foreigners will not bring the capital to Iran, and without foreign investment, I think economic growth, expecting sustainable growth, is not reasonable. We have to Firms have to cooperate with foreigners. Foreigners should have Foreigners are not aliens, in my opinion. Iran Islamic regime has manipulated people over decades to induce that foreigners are aliens, they are dangerous. But foreigners are not aliens, they are foreign citizens. They can come to Iran, they can bring their capital. We have to tell them your capital is secure here. Nobody can expropriate your capital. Expropriation is the highest risk. Decades ago, there were outright expropriation of property by the governments. Even today, there is creeping expropriation by Iran's regime. Sometimes there are firms to come to Iran to establish a firm with an Iranian counterparty, but they are forced to sell their property after 10 years. This is kind of expropriation. This is kind of risk. And the transition government should ensure them that this risk doesn't exist. Your property won't be expropriated. This is a fundamental issue that should be enforced in Iran's new
Addressed.
government. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it should be started from the first year. So these are things that should be
Creating
done and should be
security.
started. Yeah,
Creating
yeah,
creating
of course.
security. But it's very interesting what you are telling, Hamid, because um, as I'm very, very active, and many of us, we are active against the Islamic Republic. The new issue is that if we have something in Iran, they will again expropriate. So even though we are Iranian, they restart the expropriation. They have never stopped actually
Yeah, of course.
from,
Even yeah,
yeah, yeah.
private
So
ownership is not only violated for concerning foreigners. Iranian properties have also been expropriated, not only opposition properties, properties of Iranian investors who live in Iran, for example, during higher inflation periods. Inflation is a risk, and every investor has the right to hedge this risk. So every investor, if it is, if we have to accept investors have the utility in economic theory. We have a concept called utility, and the economic theory is founded of utilitarianism. This is a theory actually introduced by Jeremy Bentham, and since then, the whole economic theory is founded on utilitarianism. So we have to assume investors have utility and their objective is to maximize their utility. So during higher inflation, they stop selling their purchases. It is natural. We have to accept it. But those people who stop selling their goods, waiting for the economy to stabilize, the government seizes their properties. This is violation of private ownership has happened repeatedly over these 50 years. And even today, we hear that properties of these producers, these investors, have been expropriated because during volatile economic situation, they stopped selling, they stopped trading, they stopped purchasing, waiting for more stable conditions. So this is a way to hedge their risk. We have to accept they have the right to hedge their risks. Otherwise, the economy won't function, and Iran's government doesn't accept it. So expropriation is a major risk that happens for Iranians as well. In capitalist system, uh, private ownership is one of the three main rights that should be respected: privacy, freedom, right of freedom, life right, and private ownership. And this is something that should be ensured by the next government from the first year. This is the fundamental thing that should be done. Even in the constitution, the next government should include one article in the constitution ensuring ownership by Iranians and foreigners. I think.
so creating security, I understand, is one of the very important part, um, and also acting for uh, the taking what we have naturally, like the nature and the historical part for having more tourism. But there is another capital we have that may helps us to construct that we didn't focus on, that is the human capital.
Yeah, of
And
course.
how we should use this human capital, because we are something like 10% of Iranian abroad, and one or friends who are not Iranian must know is that all Iranian, almost everyone, is just waiting to turn back and to construct. And I think
Yes,
this
of
is a
course.
very, very important capital.
Of course, if the country has resources, natural resources, but no, the country has no educated people, they cannot
Mhm.
use those resources. So it is indispensable to have human resources, and there are many human top Iranians. Most of these Iranians, the 10% of the population, are highly educated ones, or most of them are successful investors, successful businessmen and businesswomen who who have left country to work abroad because the situation was not uh, favorable for them to remain in the country. Yeah, of course, yes. And today, one of the reasons that Iran suffers from this condition is lacking educated or skilled human resources. Most of them have traveled abroad, and the new government can send a message to them, can send a message by a new legislation based on human rights declaration to ensure, okay, Iran will be best place. Your rights won't be violated. Your privacy will be respected. These inhumane punishments have ended, and nobody can be is punished for his ideas. This is the new government's job. Should send this message to the Iranians. I'm sure there are many Iranians having capital here and ready to return to the country, bring taking their capital there to invest there. There are many Iranians, many educated people who live here, but they can have better life conditions in Iran because this is their own country, and they know the country very well, and they know how to invest, which sector to invest, and Iranians uh, living abroad can also be very helpful to in the first years of the new government to reconstruct, restructure the whole economy. As of course, this should be done by the and this can be on the agenda of the next government. And yeah, we are really uh, how is it called? I'm so impatient, eager to see those days, and of course, I hope so. I hope so. We can be
Yeah.
able to return there to. I love, for example, cooperating with Iranian universities, going to conferences there, and working with Iranian universities. But for the moment, we have no such a possibility, and uh, I hope the
Let's
new
dream
government,
about
yeah,
this.
yeah,
Let's dream. And let's work for that. I think I would like to thank you for this exchange, and we can maybe let it be like this with this idea that the day after we are turning back. How did you find with Prince Reza Pahlavi's book for the after, the idea that can be concretely implemented there?
uh, I didn't actually have time to completely read it, but I just focused on the stock market part and the part related to the central bank. So long as I remember, they didn't talk about the deficit. Probably they think deficit is a long-term issue and they cannot be resolved in the short run. But throughout their document, when I'm reading, they want to keep most of the existing structure in an effort to stop further destabilization. Maybe that's their objective. But uh, I think there is room for this book to be improved more. For example, they didn't talk about the deficit, and at the last part, they mentioned the interest rate should be decreased by the central bank. this is difficult so long as you have this huge deficit and you have no strategy to resolve the deficit in the short run. Reducing the interest rate is impossible, and they mention it. And this is a short run transition book, right? So if you don't talk about the deficit because it is long run, you shouldn't talk about the interest rate. This is also a long run issue. So which options are the short run one and which one are the long run one? They have to reconsider it, I think, and a bit modify, reform the parts related to the economy. Or concerning Iran's financial market, I think they mentioned it should be suspended for 100 days. I think it is uh, not possible. They can, if they fear market collapse, they can control it by the fluctuation range. There is a fluctuation band in most of the countries. Iran has it. They can put in force an asymmetric fluctuation range, for example, -1%, +3%, so that market is fluctuating within this range if they fear market collapse. But it is not possible to close the market 100 days because there are hundreds of firms, financial firms, working in the Iran stock market, and they have employees and they have to pay their employees. There are fund managers, there are portfolio managers, there are investment companies, there are data analysis companies, there are many firms. For example, there are more than 200 fund managers and with thousands of employees. And I think this was ignored in that book, and they didn't talk about it. And I think if they, for example, stop or suspend the stock market, then these firms will react. They will react to this measure, asking, "Okay, you have to open." Even today, market has opened. We are in a war. Market is open, and fixed income funds are traded during
Mm,
12 days of the
mm.
first war. The Iran's stock market couldn't bear 12 days of suspension. They opened one day so that fixed income funds are traded because those firms should pay their employees. So this should be uh, reformed. This part, I think, is very important and should be reformed. Uh, they can say, okay, if something bad happens, we can control it. And one important thing is that if we assume, okay, this government is withdrawn and Reza Pahlavi is returned to the country to lead the transition period, holding referendum at the end, the stock market shouldn't plunge. This is the best news for the stock market. And you see, when Maduro was kidnapped, the following days, Caracas stock market started growing because stock market sees uh, 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 imagines a future and discounts that future to the today's price. This is how stocks are valued. So when Reza Pahlavi has returned to the country, we know his politics. His politics involves friendship with the world. He believes in secular government, liberal democracy. Okay, we know what will happen to foreign investment. We know what will happen to market economy. Okay, this is the best thing that can happen to a stock market. And I think
Sure.
if the stock market is open, there is no ceiling for the prices. So they shouldn't fear uh, market plunge, and they just can consider the strategy of asymmetric limits on fluctuation to be enforced whenever a bad event happens, whenever the country falls into instability, I think.
Okay. So great. Thank you so much. Is there
Yeah.
something
Pleasure.
we forgot to mention
Yeah.
or you want to add? If not, we can close this discussion and you are the most welcome to return if anytime you need to communicate about this very, very important topic for the future of a country.
Yeah, of course. Many thanks to you. Many thanks for having me. Your camera, I can't see you. I don't know if okay. It was there was a
Hamid John,
yeah,
it's cutting, coming and
yeah,
going, the
yeah.
connection. I think something is wrong with that. Thank you so much.
Thanks to
Thank
you.
you.
You're welcome.